25 men entered a brothel in Rome's deadliest district. Only one woman was waiting for them, and she wasn't there for gold. Hidden behind stone walls, an empress disguised as a prostitute began a contest so depraved that even Rome, the empire of decadence, struggled to believe it ever happened. What unfolded that night would define her legacy for eternity. Her name was Valeria Messalina, wife to an emperor by day, and something far darker by night. When her secret life was finally exposed, her punishment came so swiftly that historians still debate whether her story was humanly possible, or the cruelest political takedown in history. What you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about power, lust, and the Roman Empire. Before we step into the palace's shadowed corridors, make sure to subscribe, because this story will completely change the way you see ancient Rome. And let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. It's always incredible to see how far Rome's legacy reaches. Hit that like button if you've ever wondered how much of what we call history is actually propaganda. Because what's about to unfold has left historians arguing for 2,000 years. Our sources come from the ancient chroniclers, Tacitus, Suetonius, Juvenal, and Pliny the Elder, men writing within living memory of the scandal itself. Forensic historians have spent centuries separating truth from imperial gossip. What they've uncovered is both less monstrous and far more human than legend suggests. The year is 38 CE. Rome stands at the center of the known world. Its marble temples glow white beneath the Mediterranean sun. But in the echoing halls of the imperial palace, darkness moves quietly. The Emperor Caligula's rule has collapsed into paranoia and bloodshed. Executions happen daily. Every whisper might be betrayal. The only way to survive is to appear harmless, insignificant, forgettable. In one quiet corner of the palace lives Claudius, Caligula's uncle. He's 47, awkward, limping, and often mocked. His speech stammers. His body betrays him. His family hides him away, believing he's too simple for politics. That assumption will one day keep him alive. Across the city, in a marble villa fit for nobility, a 15-year-old girl named Valeria Messalina prepares for a future she didn't choose. She's descended from Augustus's sister, noble blood running cold in her veins. Ancient writers describe her as captivating. Dark-haired, pale-skinned, perfectly shaped by Roman ideals. But beauty wasn't what set her apart. It was her intensity. Her stare could make men uneasy, as if she could see through their intentions. She was intelligent, ambitious, and about to become a pawn in a game she didn't even know she was playing. Among Rome's elite, marriage was never about love. It was about power. When Caligula decided that Messalina would marry his awkward uncle Claudius, no one objected. The match seemed harmless, a political convenience, nothing more. Messalina had no say in it. At 15, she was ordered to marry a man more than 30 years her senior, a man she found physically revolting. That night, her childhood ended. In Rome, her consent didn't matter. 3 years later, everything changed. Caligula was murdered by his own guards in 41 CE. Chaos erupted across the empire. While soldiers searched the palace for survivors, they found Claudius hiding behind a curtain, terrified and trembling. Almost as a joke, they hailed him emperor. In an instant, the man everyone had dismissed as a fool became ruler of the greatest empire in history. And Messalina, barely 18, was suddenly Empress of Rome. No one imagined that this teenage empress would become the most notorious woman in Roman history. Her name would be whispered in scandal for millennia. Imagine being 18 with absolute power. Your husband is 50, awkward, and distant. You live surrounded by servants, gold, and luxury beyond comprehension. You've already secured your future by producing 2 heirs. What do you do when you have everything, except excitement? Ancient accounts claim Messalina began sneaking out of the palace at night. Wearing a blonde wig and plain clothes, she vanished into the streets with one trusted attendant. The guards noticed, but who would dare question the empress? Her destination was the Subura, the seedy underbelly of Rome, where sailors and thieves met the city's prostitutes in narrow, torchlit cells. According to Tacitus and Suetonius, Messalina worked there under the alias Lysiska, meaning she-wolf. She paid the brothel keeper for a room and entertained clients who never realized the woman in their arms ruled an empire. It wasn't for wealth. She already commanded more riches than anyone alive. Sometimes she charged normal rates. Other times she refused payment entirely. Her motives remain a psychological mystery. It wasn't lust. It wasn't a rebellion. It was something deeper. Perhaps the hunger to feel alive in a world where everything was already hers. If that shocks you, hit that like button because the night of the 25-man contest is coming, and it's even more unimaginable than what you've heard so far. By day, Messalina played the perfect empress. Graceful, dignified, untouchable. She hosted foreign envoys, appeared beside Claudius at ceremonies, and managed the empire's household flawlessly. No one suspected that by night, she descended into the city's filthiest brothel. But her thrill-seeking soon escalated. The empress who once sought anonymity began hosting feasts that defied every Roman virtue. Lavish banquets transformed into obscene spectacles, where senators and their wives performed before each other at her command. Attendance wasn't optional. Declining an invitation could be seen as treason. Guests arrived terrified, left compromised, and forever indebted to her silence. The guest lists were a who's who of Roman power: senators chasing influence, generals seeking promotion, merchants craving imperial favor. Once they joined her games, she owned them. Opposing her meant exposure. It was political blackmail disguised as pleasure, and it worked brilliantly. Claudius, ever naive or willfully blind, ignored the rumors. His closest advisors, two powerful freedmen named Narcissus and Pallas, watched quietly, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. They knew Messalina's hunger for control was pushing the empire toward chaos. But by the time anyone realized how far she'd gone, the trap was already closing around her. The year was 48 CE. The empire appeared stable, its emperor calm, its empress radiant. But behind marble walls, rumors were spreading like wildfire. Messalina's appetites had grown beyond control. What began as secret nights in the Subura had become public whispers among the Roman elite. Her enemies were gathering, and her closest allies were starting to fear her. The empress had begun to believe she was untouchable. She had humiliated senators, controlled generals through seduction, and manipulated her husband's decrees to enrich her lovers. She was Rome's most powerful woman, and its most dangerous. But her ambition was about to cross a line even her ruthless contemporaries couldn't ignore. According to the historian Tacitus, Messalina fell in love with a handsome nobleman named Gaius Silius, Rome's most admired man. Known for his beauty and influence, their affair was no secret. She paraded him openly, even while Claudius was away from the capital. Then, driven by arrogance or madness, she and Silius went further than anyone could believe possible. They staged a marriage ceremony, while Claudius, her lawful husband and emperor, was still alive. It wasn't symbolic. It was a public event. Guests attended. Vows were exchanged. In Rome's moral code, this wasn't just adultery, it was treason. The moment news reached the palace, chaos erupted. Claudius's advisors, Narcissus and Pallas, realized that if the emperor hesitated, both he and the empire could fall. Messalina's marriage to Silius could be interpreted as a coup. Narcissus acted swiftly. He intercepted Claudius before Messalina could explain. Surrounded by soldiers loyal to him, he told the emperor the truth, or at least his version of it. That his wife had betrayed him, that her new husband was preparing to seize the throne, that every hour of delay meant death. Claudius, confused and trembling, gave a single order: "Bring them to me." Soldiers flooded the city. They found Silius first. He didn't resist. He was executed immediately, his body left as a warning to others. Messalina, realizing the horror of what she'd done, fled to the gardens of Lucullus, a place once famous for luxury, now her final refuge. There, she was found kneeling in the dirt, begging the empress's mother, Domitia Lepida, to plead for mercy on her behalf. But there would be none. Claudius was on his way back to the city, and Narcissus feared that if the emperor saw her face again, pity would undo everything. So Narcissus took matters into his own hands. He sent a centurion to the gardens with orders that left no room for interpretation. When the soldiers arrived, they told Messalina to end her life. She tried, but fear paralyzed her hands. According to Tacitus, she trembled, unable to drive the dagger into her chest. The centurion grew impatient, grabbed his sword, and finished the act himself. Valeria Messalina, Empress of Rome, was dead before her husband even knew she'd been condemned. When word reached Claudius, he was reportedly dining. He said nothing, simply asked for more wine. By the next morning, he forbade anyone from mentioning her name again. But Rome couldn't forget. The legend of Messalina grew larger than the woman herself. Ancient poets and historians turned her into a symbol of lust, corruption, and feminine danger. Whether she was truly the monster they described or the victim of a ruthless smear campaign is still debated. Modern scholars argue that much of her story was exaggerated, her reputation shaped by men who found powerful women threatening. Yet her name endures, a warning, a fascination, an echo of what power can do to the human soul. If you've made it this far, you now know the truth behind one of Rome's most infamous women. But was Messalina truly evil, or simply a product of a world that feared women who refused to stay silent? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you love uncovering the hidden side of history, make sure to subscribe, because next, we're diving into the untold story of Caligula's sister, a woman whose influence was even more dangerous than Messalina's. Then came the contest that would etch Messalina's name into infamy for 2,000 years. Pliny the Elder, writing in his natural history only decades after her death, described it almost casually. The Empress of Rome had challenged Scylla, the city's most renowned courtesan, to see who could take the most lovers in a single day and night. Imagine the setting. Two women, one veiled in royal disguise, the other a professional temptress, are entering into one of history's strangest, most disturbing competitions. According to Pliny and later chroniclers, both women endured through an entire cycle of day and darkness. The numbers vary from source to source. Some claim 25 men, others insist far more, but all agree on one thing. Messalina triumphed easily, still calling for more when Scylla finally surrendered in exhaustion. The raw physical scale of it borders on impossible. 25 men in 24 hours means one every hour, no pause for food, sleep, or even recovery. From a medical standpoint, such endurance would result in severe trauma and exhaustion. Did it truly happen as described? Modern historians doubt it. Yet the tale appears in multiple independent Roman accounts, proof at least that the empire believed its empress had committed acts of astonishing, almost mythic depravity. What could drive a person to this? Today, psychology might call it hypersexuality disorder, an uncontrollable flood of intrusive, compulsive desires, where satisfaction fades as behavior escalates, no matter the consequences. Ancient sources paint the same picture. Messalina constantly craving, never fulfilled, her conduct spiraling far beyond reason. Roman physicians had no concept of mental illness. They blamed hysteria, believing a woman's womb could wander through her body and cause madness. Had a Roman doctor examined her, he would have prescribed herbs or diet changes, never seeing the deeper psychological storm inside. Trapped in a world that dismissed her mind as a medical oddity, Messalina spiraled further, lost in impulses she couldn't explain or control. Back at the palace, her double life was unraveling. Too many servants whispered. Too many senators had seen too much. The streets buzzed with rumor. The empress herself seen prowling the brothels of Subura. Nobles traded stories in secret, while Claudius, her husband, remained oblivious, shielded by a wall of courtiers who filtered every truth. Narcissus, his chief advisor, waited and watched. He knew her enemies were gathering. Every rival she had ruined, every ally she had betrayed, wanted vengeance. The storm was forming over Rome, and Messalina, blind to its fury, was about to summon lightning upon herself. Because in the year 48 CE, Messalina fell in love. Not with her emperor, nor with any fleeting stranger from the night, but with Gaius Silius, perhaps the most handsome man in all of Rome. A senator, rich and ambitious, Silius was everything Claudius was not. Their affair was no secret, but what came next defied every boundary of logic. While Claudius was away at Ostia, supervising grain shipments, Messalina married Silius in public. Yes, married him, though still wed to the emperor. It was no secret tryst, but a full Roman wedding. Sacred vows, priests, witnesses, signed contracts, music, feasting, and senators filling the gardens she had once stolen from her victims. Tacitus himself described the spectacle, the Empress of Rome celebrating her new husband, as if the empire itself were hers to give away. What could she have been thinking? Historians offer two theories. Either she had lost all grip on reality after years of reckless indulgence, or she was attempting a coup, planning to make Silius emperor by replacing Claudius. Either explanation reveals the same truth. Messalina no longer understood fear. Picture being invited to that wedding. You receive a summons from the Empress to attend her marriage to another man while her imperial husband still lives. Refuse and risk her wrath. Attend, and you're complicit in treason. Death lurks behind either choice. Many chose to go, terrified to decline, hoping her gamble would succeed and earn them favor, or at least spare their lives. The feast stretched for hours. Laughter and lyres filled the air. The bride and groom performed sacred rites as though mocking the gods themselves. Some sources even claim they consummated their union before witnesses, turning the affair into a ritualized act of defiance. Then came the news that ended it all. Messengers reached Claudius in Ostia with a report so absurd he dismissed it as gossip. His wife had married another man in front of half the Senate. Only after seeing signed marriage documents and multiple witnesses did he finally believe. Narcissus saw the opportunity instantly. This was the proof he needed: undeniable treason. Acting fast, he seized command of the Praetorian Guard and led troops toward Rome. Back in her gardens, Messalina's celebration continued, until the first messenger arrived. Claudius was marching home with his soldiers, and he knew everything. The wine haze vanished. Reality crashed down. She understood in that moment. Death awaited her, Silius, and every soul tied to that wedding. Desperate, she tried one final act of manipulation. Clutching her children, Britannicus and Octavia, she rushed to intercept Claudius before he entered the city, hoping the sight of his wife and children would soften him. But Narcissus knew her charm could undo everything. He blocked the meeting, warning the emperor that her tears would poison his resolve. Silius was executed first, accepting his fate calmly, requesting only a swift death. The purge spread fast. Guests of the wedding were hunted down, some executed, others forced to take their own lives. Rome's elite trembled as the Empress's allies were erased overnight. Messalina fled to the gardens of Lucullus, an estate she had seized years earlier through lies and executions. It was cruelly fitting that it became her prison. With her was her mother, Lepida, mostly absent through her rise, now standing by her fall. Ancient historians wrote that the young empress's mind broke completely, swinging between rage and despair, panic and eerie calm. She tried to write to Claudius, but couldn't find words. She attempted to take her own life, but fear froze her hands. How does one process falling from absolute power to certain death in a single day? For 7 years, she had ruled Rome's desires, bending the empire to her will. Now she sat trembling in the garden she once stole, awaiting the executioner. Narcissus refused to risk mercy. He knew if Claudius saw her again, saw her beauty, heard her voice, she might survive. So he sent orders to end it immediately. A tribune and centurion entered the garden. They found Messalina in the gardens with her mother beside her, a dagger trembling between her fingers. The tribune paused, granting her one final chance to claim a shred of dignity through her own hand. But even now, faced with the certainty of death, her courage deserted her. Lepida, her mother, begged her to end it herself, to die as a noblewoman, not as a condemned criminal. Yet Messalina couldn't move. Pride and terror warred inside her, freezing her where she stood. At last, the tribune lost patience. He stepped forward and struck. The sword fell, and the most infamous woman in Rome was no more. Messalina died at 22, in the very gardens she had stolen through deceit and executions, slain by the same imperial machine she once commanded. Lepida remained long enough to perform one last act of love, closing her daughter's eyes, arranging her body, restoring a trace of dignity to the ruin that power and scandal had made. Then she vanished from history forever. Claudius was dining when the news arrived. According to Suetonius, he showed no emotion. He did not ask how she died. He neither mourned nor celebrated. He simply continued eating, then asked for more wine, as if the death of an empress were an unremarkable footnote to the day. 2,000 years later, historians still argue over what truly happened. Every ancient source had its bias. Tacitus, writing half a century later, used Messalina as a moral warning about corruption and female excess. Juvenal, the satirist, cared more for shock value than truth. Suetonius delighted in scandal for its own sake. Pliny repeated gossip rather than first-hand facts. Modern historians have tried to strip away propaganda to find the woman beneath the legend. Most agree that Messalina likely did engage in scandalous behavior. The general outline holds since it led directly to her execution. But the infamous details, the brothel disguises, the 25 lovers, the endless orgies, may be exaggerations or outright fabrications. Why distort the truth? Because after Messalina's death, Claudius married Agrippina the Younger, Nero's mother, a woman with every reason to blacken her predecessor's name. The darker Messalina appeared, the more virtuous Agrippina seemed by comparison. Most of our surviving records were written during or after Nero's reign, when Agrippina's faction controlled which stories were told, and which were erased. Feminist scholars have since asked a difficult question. Why is Messalina remembered as the ultimate symbol of sexual corruption when male emperors committed far worse? Caligula committed incest and public rape. Nero forced senators to watch as he violated their wives. Tiberius kept a villa where he preyed on children. Yet none are branded as history's embodiment of lust the way Messalina was. Because in Roman eyes, female sexual autonomy was far more dangerous than male sexual violence. A man who dominated through sex displayed strength. A woman who sought pleasure for herself displayed rebellion. Messalina's destruction had to be total, not only in life but in memory. She became a warning carved into history, a myth meant to terrify women into obedience. So what does her story really tell us? It reveals how female desire has been punished and weaponized for centuries. When men use sex to assert power, it's accepted as dominance. When women claim power through sexuality, it shatters the hierarchy. Roman historians couldn't allow that, so they turned Messalina into a monster, so grotesque that her legend would silence women for generations. Yet another question lingers: truth versus propaganda. How much of what we call history is merely the version written by those who won, the men who controlled ink, parchment, and memory? Messalina left no words of her own. We don't know her thoughts, her motives, or her pain. All we have are the voices of those who despised her. Consider what her life actually was. Married at 15 to a man decades older, denied real power despite her title, confined by a society that offered women no outlet for ambition or desire. If she truly sought pleasure to excess, perhaps it was the only form of control available to her, the only way to feel alive in a world where every other choice belonged to men. Her children bore the cost. Britannicus was poisoned by Nero. Octavia was forced to marry him, endured torment, and was later executed once he grew bored. Both carried the shadow of their mother's infamy. Meanwhile, the men who orchestrated her downfall, Narcissus and Pallas, rose higher than ever, ruling Rome from behind the throne. Their power was secured by her ruin. Her fall remains one of history's fastest descents. One day an empress presiding over banquets, the next a corpse in her stolen garden. No trial, no plea, no mercy. In imperial Rome, power lasted only as long as someone stronger allowed it. So the tale ends as it began, with a young girl's arranged marriage leading to 7 years of scandal, a forbidden wedding, and execution at 22. Whether she truly endured 25 lovers in one night or whether that detail was crafted to destroy her reputation will never be known. What is certain is that her name became synonymous with sexual excess for 2,000 years. A legend shaped not by truth but by fear. The Romans created a cautionary monster, but behind that monster may have been a woman more complex, more human, and far more tragic than her enemies ever admitted. If this story made you question what you thought you knew about Rome, subscribe to the channel. We uncover the truths that history tried to bury. Hit the bell next time we expose Agrippina the Younger, the woman who married her uncle, allegedly seduced her own son, and ruled Rome with a mastery that made Messalina seem almost innocent. Tell us in the comments what unsettled you most. The 25-man challenge, the public wedding, or the realization that history itself may have lied. Drop your thoughts below, because history's darkest secrets aren't always about what happened, they're about what people wanted you to believe.